Welcome back. Well, when you woke up this morning, if you woke up before 6 o'clock, you may have been expecting just stage 2 load shedding today. At around 6 o'clock this morning, Eskom released a brief statement saying that it was moving to stage 4. Then, just before noon, it said it was moving to stage 6. Now, as you join us on the Pulse tonight, in the last few minutes, Eskom's released another statement. You may want to brace yourself for this. It says, stage 6 load shedding will continue to be implemented until Friday morning at 5 o'clock. It will then be reduced to stage 5 until Saturday morning. They also go on to say that there have been breakdowns at 2 generation units at the Grootfontein power station, a unit at Arnott, Duva, Kendal, Kriel, Tutuka, and 2 other units at Arnott and Camden, Kendal, and the Kriel power station have been delayed and returned to service. The upshot of this is stage 6 load shedding until at least Friday morning. Clyde Mallinson is an electricity and energy expert. He joins us now. Clyde, good afternoon to you. What's gone wrong?
Gee, let's skip that one, and we haven't got time. But it's very sad, and it's been coming for a long time now, and it's really just cumulative. Who would have ever thought that we would be more familiar with the names of our power stations than our soccer players, as it were? So they roll off one's tongue now, and if it's not Arnott going down 1 unit or Grootfontein, and so it's just, I'm afraid, it's an accident been waiting to happen, and it's starting to unplay now and unfold, and it's happening right now in real time.
Frankly, I get the sense that we're falling off a cliff.
Yeah, we are. I mean, I've got a wonderful photograph of a steam locomotive going over a cliff. It was in Yorkshire somewhere, and it was filmed for Mission Impossible 3. And it sometimes feels like Mission Impossible now. You know, you can run out of many things, but you can't run out of time. Or you can't catch up time if you have run out of it. I'm afraid we're very, very close now to having run out of time, and we're moving from preventing load shedding to mitigating against load shedding while we try and fix them. We're in Imtiaz Suleiman territory now, if you know what I mean. It's not just can we fix this, it's can we endure it while we're fixing it.
Professor Samson Mampwedi suggested on Newzroom Afrika channel 405 this afternoon that sabotage may be responsible for this. In fact, he even suggested it could be linked to the ANC's conference. Quite a strong claim to make. Could there be some element of sabotage?
Yeah, it's very difficult to comment on this without knowledge. My argument would be that we've had about 5 years of slow poison sabotage by inaction. So there's been regulatory sabotage. And if there are incidences of physical sabotage, they probably haven't or aren't as bad as what the let's call it the white-collar sabotage of lack of planning and lack of action. That, to me, is almost treasonous.
So just to be very clear about this, because there are lots of people who wear white collars who are involved in this.
Right.
Are you talking about the management at Eskom, under Durate as a sort of totem, a symbol of that? Or are you talking about people in government, or are you talking about people at the regulator?
I'm talking specifically about people at the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy who are responsible for seeing to new replacement being brought online. So I'm specifically speaking about Gwedi Montash, but his predecessors as well. So not just him. That department has not done its job in actually getting enough new generation to be built in anticipation of the old fleet doing what it's doing now. This is not a surprise. You will know. We spoke 6 months ago. We spoke 2 years ago. This is not a surprise. It's exactly what plays out when you have got reducing fleet availability and the load on the remaining fleet keeps increasing in intensity. That's what's happened. And I'm afraid to say that I think it's tomorrow morning, Coburg goes off for refurbishment. So if we're on stage 6 now, could easily be stage 7 tomorrow unless something changes.
You talk about the long history of this. In fact, earlier today, Malusi Gigaba, who was the Minister of Public Enterprises, gave a brief interview to my colleague, Colliam Gambi, and he made the point that he believes that, in fact, he is not responsible for what happened.
Well, I think it was...
we're going to play the bite.
Oh, okay.
Fall back, we need to hear this.
Had not implemented load shedding, had positive a positive balance sheet, even though it had a huge debt. And in 2017...
That's a contradiction in terms.
No, it's not a contradiction.
That's a contradiction
in terms.
It's
not a contradiction in terms. It had a healthy balance sheet in the sense that it was...
And yet indebted at the same time.
The debt was as a result of the policies of government which had been taken prior to 2008 when I was not in government, and as a result of the need to increase the energy, the electricity generation capacity, because in 2008, when I was not Minister of Public Enterprises, we began to experience load shedding.
Malusi Gigaba speaking earlier today. So Malusi Gigaba says that it's not his fault. There are others who are, of course, in charge of Eskom in the past, people like Matsela Cook, will make the same argument. Do you apportion blame to them?
Yeah, it's difficult to apportion blame to any one person. The one thing I know for sure is I think it was Coco and Molefe who refused to sign the power purchase agreements. And that stalled the whole renewable energy program. And that stalling of that program, it was stalled for about 5 or 6 years before it got on track again. And that program was putting in 1.5 to 2 gigawatts a year. So if you take 5 years of having skipped that, that's 10,000 megawatts. It's not equivalent to 10 stages of load shedding because renewable doesn't run 24/7, but it's equivalent to 4 stages of load shedding. That was not done. And if you don't get those replacements in place, what do you do when the old starts breaking down? So we're running at the moment, plugging gaps of where the coal power stations are falling over. And what we should have done is build new to allow us to manage the coal fleet to retire gracefully, as I've said many, many times before. We now wish we had a funeral plan that we took, and if you haven't got one, you haven't got one, and it's very, very sad now, quite frankly.
So stage 6 load shedding until Friday morning. Mm-hmm. Maybe that'll change, maybe it won't. But certainly the period of intense load shedding, Eskom's run out of cash to pay for diesel. We know that too, which I'm sure is a factor to this.
Yes.
So the question then is, what happens next? Now, I've heard some maybe optimistic projections from people like Professor Mark Swilling, a person I take seriously, who suggested that the amount of generation capacity that's been built by the private sector may start to reduce load shedding within the next 2 years. Is he too optimistic?
No, I think 2 years but that's what it is. It's 2 years. It's not 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 days. So I don't think it's optimistic. There's so many things that are misleading. One of them is that Eskom themselves have anticipated, in a kind of a worst stage scenario, stage 3 for the next 12 months. But in that scenario, they're using 60 billion rand a year on diesel. And then there's a footnote that says, we haven't actually got a budget of 60, so the model said this is what we would do if we had an infinite budget. But we can't do that. So stage 3 is actually is conservative. Just add on a couple of more stages as you see fit. And I've questioned them and said, please cap it at what the diesel can produce. Because it's not only a monetary thing. I don't know if you realize the trucks can't get to the diesel stations fast enough. Those OCGTs suck diesel out of the storage tanks faster than trucks lined up in a row, all plugged in, can actually deliver. I mean, that's the situation. It's like pouring water into a bucket where the hole in the bucket is bigger than the hose pipe you're putting into the bucket. So even if we had infinite money, we can't spend more than about 2.5 billion a month on diesel. So that comes to about, 24 times. It's about 30 billion. And yet in Eskom's model, they show 60 billion. And so you now have to say, okay, if we can't spend 60 billion and we've only got a budget of 10, let's add on 1 or 2 additional stages of load shedding. So, and, that goes from 3 to 5. Permanently. Yeah.
Sure. Clyde Mallinson, thank you. Lots of bad news, I'm afraid, around Eskom. The upshot of it is, for at least until Friday morning, stage 6 load shedding.